Hello, welcome to Lab 2. Today we are going to actually take our Windows ISO file that we created in our last lab, and we're going to create a virtual machine workstation for the Windows 10 operating system that we can use throughout the rest of this course. So before we get started, we need to go ahead and open up VMware Workstation. You can see that your icon should exist on your desktop as it does right here. You can double click on that icon, and when you do, it will pop up this VMware Workstation management application. You can see that down here on the bottom left-hand side, it says My Computer, and there's nothing underneath it. The reason that there's nothing underneath it is because we haven't created a virtual machine yet. You might have some things under there if you've used virtual machines before. If this is a brand new install and you've never created a virtual machine before, and you do have something underneath My Computer, then just go ahead and delete whatever it is because it's irrelevant. So we're going to go ahead and also make sure that we plug our USB drive in. And I'm just going to pop open File Explorer, make sure that my USB drive is there, and it is. You can see that my Windows 10 ISO file is under my CNT 201 folder here. So we're all set there. Now, before we get into the VMware Workstation creation of the operating system, I am going to do one little thing here, and I'm going to create a new folder inside of my USB drive that is for the Windows 10 operating system that we're creating. So I'm just going to go ahead and right click on the white space there, and I'm going to come down to New and create a new folder. And I'm going to name this folder Windows 10 Pro, just so that I know that this is where I'm going to store the virtual machine that I'm about to create. So I can go ahead and close this out. And now we're going to actually create this virtual machine that we're doing. Now, if you're working on the lab and you're following along with the lab instructions, keep in mind that the lab instructions may or may not follow exactly what we're doing here in this video. So what we do in the video is more important than what the lab instructions are showing. So go ahead and click on Create a New Virtual Machine. And this is just going to pop up the wizard to create a virtual machine, and it gives you two different options. The first option is typical. We're not going to use typical ever. We never use typical. We're custom type of people. We're IT people. So we'll go down to the custom advanced action, and we'll click next. This window right here of the wizard is asking us what type of hardware compatibility we want to use. If you're in a Windows environment, you're using Workstation 16.2x. If you're in a Macintosh environment, if you're working off of a Macintosh computer, you need the Fusion 12.2x. So you should be using a Windows operating system. If you're not, you're taking a Windows class, use a Windows operating system. Come on. So we want to keep this at the Workstation 16.2. Again, the numbers here, the 16.2 is just because we're using VMware Workstation 16 Pro. It may change later on in the course if we change the VMware Workstation version that we're using. But nevertheless, Workstation's what we want to use, not Fusion. Go ahead and click on Next. And now we're going to go ahead and choose where our operating system is going to come from. So this is our ISO file that we created, which should be on that removable hard drive of yours. So we're going to go ahead and make sure that you click on Installer Disk Image. And then click Browse, and you can see here under our operating system, our CNT 201 folder, our Windows 10 ISO file exists right there. So we can just go ahead and click Open, and it should illustrate right here where that disk file is. Now again, I have this under the CNT 201 folder. You had yours under the USB drive itself, the external hard drive itself. So whatever the drive letter that's assigned to it, whether it's F or G or E or whatever, just make sure you find that Windows 10 ISO file. Go ahead and click Next. And now we need to give the virtual machine a name. So we're going to go ahead and name this Windows 10 Pro, just like that folder that we created earlier. And then we're going to change where we want this virtual machine to exist. This is a very important step. I can't emphasize this enough. If you are using your computer and your computer has limited hard drive space and you choose the default location, which is your C drive, you will fill up your hard drive. This is why we have the external hard drive, so that we know where all the files are, so that we can delete them when we're done with the class or when we're done with the file. So you have to make sure that you click browse here and you scroll to your E drive, or sorry, F drive. For me, I'm going to click on the CNT 201 folder, and then that folder that we just created, the Windows 10 Pro folder. This is where we want this to be stored. I'm going to hit OK, and it should say whatever the location of your USB drive, and then Windows 10 Pro folder. For me, I have the CNT 201 because I'm teaching multiple classes and I need to separate. So you can do this exact file location if you want. If you want to have the CNT 201 folder first and then go into the Windows 10 Pro, that's fine. I don't care. But make sure that you do change the location to that external USB drive, because if you store this on your hard drive and your computer doesn't have enough hard drive space, life will become very, very difficult. So go ahead and click next once you've done that. The firmware type that we're going to be utilizing for this is BIOS. I know that my computer is telling me that I should be using UEFI. The reason that it's telling me that is because I have a very advanced computer. Yours may already be selected at BIOS, but we just want to make sure that we're using BIOS. So click on BIOS and click next. The number of processors, this is going to be something that you can change if you'd like to. It's really dependent on how many processors your computer has and how fast you want this computer to react. So I'm just going to go ahead and leave it as my default, which is 2 and 1. I could change this to 1 and 1 or 4 and 2 or whatever, depending on what my computer. I could go all the way up to 32 if I wanted to, and 32. But I'm just going to leave this at 2 and 1. You can change this if you'd want, but honestly, you want at least 1 and 1 on here. So go ahead and click next. This is the amount of memory that your computer is going to be utilizing. So, think of a virtual machine like you would a regular desktop computer. How much memory do you need for your computer to run? For this specific computer, we're going to just leave it at the 2 gigabytes. We could go up higher if we wanted to, but we're just going to leave it at the 2 gigabytes. So if you want to go up to 4, if you have the space and capacity, feel free. It'll make your machines run a little bit faster. I'm going to click next. And then this is giving us the different type of network connections that we can have. So we can use a bridged network, which gives the guest operating system, the machine that we're making right now, direct access to external Ethernet networks. Or we can use the network address translation, or we can use the host only networking. We'll talk about all these later on in the class, but for now, we're just going to leave this on the network address translation and click next. This one is asking us what type of input-output controller we want to use. Just go ahead and leave it on the recommended. We're not going to really talk too much about the difference between these. So just leave it on whatever's recommended and click next. Same with the type of disk. This virtual disk can be an IDE, it can be a SCSI, it can be a SATA, or it could be NVMe. This one is recommending NVMe, so I'm just going to go ahead and leave it at that. We are going to be creating a new virtual disk. This is not using an already existing one. We'll do the already existing one later on in another class or another lab. But for now, we'll just leave this as create a new virtual disk. Click next. And we want to change the size of our virtual disk. We're going to go ahead and make this 100 gigs. The reason that we're making this 100 gigs is because we want to have a little bit of extra space that we can play with. So go ahead and leave it as 100 gigs. And then it's asking us if we want to allocate the disk space now. We're not going to check on that. And then it asks if we want to store the disk as a single file or as multiple files. And it says that splitting the disk into multiple files makes it easier to move the computer to another machine, but it reduces performance with very large disks. So we're going to go ahead and store this as a single file. We're not trying to move this to another computer or anything. We're just going to leave it as a single file. Go ahead and click Next. And we need to change where the file is located. So we're going to click on Browse again. Make sure that you're on your USB drive again in the folder that you want to be in. And we want this file to be inside of this Windows 10 Pro folder. So go ahead and click Save and Next. And we're good. So we can go ahead and click Finish. Now, if we wanted to add more hardware or something like that at any point, we could do that right now before we hit Finish. We could have clicked on Customize Hardware, and we could have added more hardware if we wanted to. But we don't want to do that right now. This is just a simple installation of a Windows 10 virtual machine on your computer. And we're not trying to do anything fancy just yet. Okay, so now we have the machine created. A little pop-up may or may not come up at this point. Just letting you know that you're using SideChannel Mitigation, which is a security feature with Windows 10, or sorry, VMware Workstation. So it tells you how to disable it if you want. We're not going to worry about this. We're just going to hit a OK on here. Once we've done that, it's going to actually start up the virtual machine. And depending on how much resources you allocated, if you allocated more memory or more processing, this might go a little bit quicker for you. But if you just stuck with the generalized stuff that we used, this process might take just a little bit of time. As you can see, the Windows icon has popped up, and it's actually going through the process of installing Microsoft Windows 10 Pro, or at least it's going to. So our first step here is just asking us what type of language we're using. Most of you guys should be using English. If you want to use another language, feel free. But note that I don't speak any other languages. So if I can't read what it is that I need to read, then it might become a little bit difficult. So you should probably just stick with English. Go ahead and click on Next. And then we're going to install now. Now, each one of these steps might take a little while in between each step. So if there's a big gap of silence or whatever, I'll eliminate those from the videos. And I'll make sure that you get all the steps that you need. I'll just cut out all the white noise. So at this point, it's asking us if we have a activation key. We don't. This is just for test purposes. So we're going to come down here to where it says I don't have a product key. Go ahead and click on that. And then we choose the operating system that we want. Notice that you have all different versions of the Windows 10 operating system here. For us, we're going to click on Windows 10 Pro, not Pro in, just regular Pro, and click Next. Go ahead and click on I accept the license terms and click Next, and then click on Customize Install. At this point, you're going to have a Windows operating system hard drive area pop up where we're going to allocate the amount of space that we're going to use. So click on this allocation size, click New, and we're going to change this from the 100 gigs to 60. So that's 60,000 megabytes. Go ahead and click Apply, click OK. And now we have our different partitions. Your partition sizes might change just a little bit, but the important part is that you have this 58.5 gigabyte primary partition. Go ahead and click Next. And at this point, it's going to install the Windows operating system, which is going to take a little bit of time. Okay, now that that's done, let's take a look at setting up this install. So obviously we're in the United States, so we're going to go ahead and click yes here. And we're going to click yes here because we're using the US keyboard layout. And we're not going to add another layout. We don't need to. So we're going to click skip. And Again, this process might take just a little bit of time. Okay, so at this step, we're going to have to change this to set up for an organization. If we're setting up for your personal use, it's going to ask us for a Microsoft email account, and we don't want to do that. That's not how we want to set this computer up. So we're going to set up for an organization and click Next. And then it's going to ask us for a email address still, but what we're going to do is come down here at the bottom and click Join Domain or Domain Join instead. What this is going to allow us to do is just type in a username. So now we're going to just type in student, S-T-U-D-E-N-T, and click Next. And we're going to create ourselves a password. We're just going to use our generic C&T password. For this, we're going to click Next and type that in again, C&T password, and click Next. Now it's going to ask us for some security questions. We don't care about these because this is just a generic account. So we're just going to select 3 of these randomly and type in some random garbage. Just make sure that the random garbage that you type in isn't the same for all 3. And click Next. At this point, it's going to ask us for privacy settings. I'm a security professional by trade, and I don't like people looking at my stuff. So we're just going to go ahead and get rid of all of these. We could go through what they are and talk about them all, but we don't care. We don't want any of them activated. The only reason that you would want this is if you're trying to be one of those people that provides every single piece of information that you can. So we're going to turn all those off and hit accept. And then it's going to ask us if we want to customize anything. We're just going to go ahead and skip that. And then it's going to ask us about Cortana, if we want to use Cortana on our computer. Again, we're just going to say not right now. And it should allow us to start installing the operating system now. And again, this step is going to take a little bit of time. So we'll just fast forward through this. And as soon as we get to the actual operating system, we'll go to that. So let this do its thing, and we'll see you in a second. Okay, now that that's done, we have ourselves a Windows operating system. So at this point, the install is complete, but we do have to do a little bit of configuration before this lab is over with. So first things first, we're going to go ahead and we're going to change the computer's name so that it has some sort of a name that is identifiable for us when we connect it later on and when we're looking at some of the other stuff. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on our icon here down at the bottom, our Windows icon. We're going to right click on it and we're going to click on System. We can just click off this browser stuff. And you can see here that this tells us all about our computer, and it actually tells us our desktop's name, which is just a random device name. So we're going to rename it. Now, there's a couple different ways that you can rename your PC. You could just click on this Rename PC part right here, but we want to get to do this the right way, the way that you would do it in a corporate environment. So we want to scroll down here to the bottom here, where it says Rename this PC Advanced. So we're going to click on that, and in here, we can see that there's just a couple other settings that we can do. We're going to click on the change icon, and this will pop up to where it's going to give us a computer name change, and it allows us to change the work group. And in the future, it'll also allow us to change the domain name if we want to join it to a domain. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to name this based off of who we are so that it's easier for us to look at and grade and all that stuff. So for instance, I'm going to call mine Dr. Kid Win 10. So you can just go ahead and use your last name and then Win 10 for Windows 10. If you're taking this class in person, On campus, you'll use the machine name that is listed on your desk station. So it might be January 01, like it shows in the lab, or it might be, February 02 or whatever. So regardless, name your computer what it is that it's supposed to be named, and then we're going to go ahead and click on work group, and we're going to change this to TI 138. This work group is just a way to identify all the computers in the work group as being part of the same group of computers and nothing more. It's not going to really change anything inside of our virtual environment, especially if you're doing this from home. But if you're on campus, all of the computers will have the same work group name, so they'll all exist and be able to be seen within that work group. So we're going to go ahead and hit OK. And when we hit OK, it's going to take a little bit of time, but eventually it will ask us to, or it'll welcome us to the work group, and it'll ask us to restart our computer. And again, this process could take a little bit of time, or it could be very, very quick. So as you see here, it says, welcome to the TI 138 work group. Go ahead and hit OK. And it'll tell us to go ahead and restart, hit OK. In order for us to restart, all we have to do is hit close here, and it'll tell us that we need to restart now, which is what we're going to do. Once the computer restarts, it'll give us the opportunity to log in with our student username that we created earlier. And then once we log in, we'll go back into system and look to see that our username, our computer name and our workgroup name have been changed. At that point, you'll take a screenshot, which is part of your lab submission process. So we can click on this and we can type in our password, C&T password, and it'll bring up the Windows operating system for us. Notice that I have this in a small screen here. You can make this bigger if it's a little bit easier. I like to keep it small so that I know that I'm working within the virtual machine as opposed to working on my regular computer. So again, we go down to our Windows icon, we right click on that and we hit System. And now you can see that our device name has been changed. For mine, it's Dr. Kid Win10. And you can't see your work group there, but if you come down here to the rename this PC Advanced again, you'll see that your work group has changed as well to TI 138. So if you take a screenshot of this right here, this is what you'll need for your lab submission, along with your work order form that explains all the things that you did and how that worked out for you. You can go ahead and hit OK and close out of this. And since we're done with the lab, you can go ahead and click your Start menu, click on the Power button, and hit Shut Down to shut down your Windows 10 machine. Whenever you're done with these labs, always make sure you shut down the computers. Otherwise, when you boot your computer up for the first time, it will boot up with this running virtual machine as well, which will slow your computer down. And that's it. You're all set. Hope you enjoyed the video. Again, if you haven't already, please click the like button and leave a comment about how you felt about the video or what you liked about the video. And we will see you in the next one.